Okay, in my essay around horror movies, I always, and Kyle knows about this, I always say horror movies at the core is all about feminism. And oh boy, does this film kind of reinforce my belief that all horror at the core is about feminism, whether it is the hero or whether you are attacking. And I think that's both, isn't it?
But the hero of this movie was not written to be a woman. It was an androgynous writing. All the characters were written genderless, so that you could cast them one way or the other.
Yeah,
maybe that's Dan O'Bannon not really caring too much about. He always caught me as a person who maybe didn't care much about the movies he was making. But yeah, we're definitely going to talk about. I definitely think there's feminism in the monster.
Yes.
Quite a bit so.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about Ridley Scott's movie from the late 70s, one that is considered to be one of the greatest horror films, although I don't consider it a horror film. I know I'm crazy like that, but we're going to talk about the original 1978.
Still seems fresh now.
Alien, baby. Join us for it. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Not a horror movie. You're hilarious. All right, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you to continue to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. Hey, we do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals. And today we're going to talk about, I consider one of the top 5 best horror movies. He doesn't consider it a horror movie. This is really weird. What the heck's going on? Alien!
Yeah, so...
Wait, Star Babies.
But there's other terms.
Wasn't it originally called Star Babies?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like Halloween with the babysitter murders. This is just the spaceship murders.
Star Babies.
The commercial towing vehicle Nostromo has encountered an unknown but seemingly intelligent transmission coming from a distant moon. As the crew gets on the ground to examine the source of the transmission, one of them is incapacitated by a parasitic organism that latches onto his face. What follows as the crew get him to the med bay will put the lives of every crew member at risk, but one of them has a nefarious reason to find the creature.
Okay, so there's some great documentaries out there about the movie, Beast Within. There's a recent one called
Memory, The Origins of Alien, which I might have crowdfunded. You should check it out.
Yes, so it has a lot of details and a lot of really interesting facts about the movie. I don't think Memory features a lot of Dan O'Bannon because he passed away.
Yeah, I think there's some archival stuff, but it's mostly new footage.
Which is, of course, he's a typical writer. He's very soft-spoken, wears a bow tie. He's almost like, are you sure you write this stuff? Almost like Elmer Leonard's a very soft-spoken kind of guy. Yeah.
More so when you look at Dan O'Bannon's work, where he worked on Dark Star, which is kind of narcissistic, and then he worked on this, and then he worked on Return of the Living Dead, and it's just like, are you sure you wrote these? Like, that's what it feels like with Dan O'Bannon. He feels like he could have been a writer of high-class stuff at some point.
He's almost like this, like, I'm apologizing for this, it's cheap, but I'm writing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how did this game about?
So the great thing about this movie coming about was that it again, the success of Star Wars bleeds through a lot of different ways.
Yeah, even though this was started before Star Wars, but it's almost like when Star Wars came out, it's like, yes, we get the green light to do this.
we can get this and we can get away with it. And in many ways, the movie is, I mean, I laugh. I say it's not horror. I get the horror elements of it. It's essentially a haunted house in space. It's essentially a slasher movie in space.
It's American Gothic, but in space, yeah.
Yeah, and when you have someone like Ridley Scott going at the film, we talked about recently with Conan the Barbarian that he had, just finished this movie or was just kind of choosing to do this movie, and he said no to Conan. But he was a person who likes to storyboard the entire film. He likes to get heavily invested in the process from beginning to end. And he also likes to create his own director's cut, as we know later on. So every single movie he's ever made has had a director's cut.
There is a cinematographer credit for this movie, and I don't think he did any other work because I think primarily it's just a title for only because I think Ridley did a lot of cinematography work, operating the camera.
He's heavily involved, but I don't want to take away from Derek Van Lint, who did the cinematography, because he brought a lot of new things to the table. He had worked on a film called Dragon Slayer a few years prior, and he'd kind of gotten a more handheld dolly cam that he was able to use that they utilized on this film a lot more. He brought a lot of the technical aspects of how do we capture this stuff on film, whereas I think Ridley brought a lot of the artistic flair of what he wanted to see. So it was a good kind of marrying of the two, because I don't think you'd have the ingenuity in the cinematography without Derek Van Lint at the helm there.
Which is interesting is the writer, Dan O'Bannon, was able to assemble a crew without the production assembling a crew. He pretty much assembled the crew.
Yeah, and again, he wasn't that famous yet. So
even before the writing was finished, they were assembling storyboards, of writing out concept set designs, and meeting H.R. Giger to do like the Alien, and meeting him in Paris. I think I remember the story of what the making of Dan O'Brien was working on some kind of development for the movie Dune that never got made.
Yeah, Jodorowsky's Dune, which is another great documentary about a failed Dune adaptation. I think there was a failed version of Paris, that, and we have Dan O'Bannon who had worked, and that's where he got a lot of these people, he got them from the expired Dune film, and kind of had been talking about this alien idea during that time, and a lot of them came over with him. It's interesting because I think you actually had most of the stuff assembled from a production angle before Scott was even really on board. And that's what's funny is because he is such a intensive pick apart everything and kind of do it my own way, I would be surprised to see that everything went smoothly internally during the making of this film, because he kind of walked into it with a lot of production crew already there. He had a say in a lot of the casting, but that's about it from a pre-production standpoint until he just got heavily invested. But yeah, Giger's Necronomicon 4, or I think or Necronom 4, was the basis for a lot of the alien stuff. That was the book a lot of people looked at where they took those ideas and kind of melded them. But we wouldn't have that case without Dan O'Bannon meeting him after a failed Dune.
Yeah, he met him at Geiger had a show in Paris, and then I think Dan said he gave me opiates. And I go, why do you take these? Because I'm scared of what's in my mind.
Yeah, I am too. I've read a lot of Giger's work. I've looked at a lot of it. It's very intensive. I've read a lot of his biographical work. And
he hated sunlight. Like
he hated everything.
He wanted to sleep all day. He hated sunlight and work all night. He was just a weird dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say too that the film is a lot of ways. I do see it as a lot of ways as a spiritual remake of Dark Star taken much more seriously. You know, you don't have the weird alien ball thing that gets on the ship, but you do have an alien that gets on the ship.
Right.
And as I've famously said, Dark Star is one of the only 2 John Carpenter films I don't like. It's nice to see a remake done for this film, spiritually speaking.
Even Dan calls it a really expensive student film, a really cheap full feature film.
Yeah, I like to see it as a student film because he's still learning. Everyone is.
It's a really expensive student film.
Yeah, but we had a lot of elements of like Forbidden Planet taken from this film, The Thing from Another World, Planet of the Vampires. I think Planet of the Vampires was a lot of the film was criticized actually for a while for being kind of ripping off those elements, but it does feel like a nice marrying of parts from all of them. It's not heavily ripping off any one thing, but there are weird similarities between this film and Planet of the Vampires.
So you have Dan O'Bannon, Ronald Suchet, who actually came up with the concept of how do you get the alien on board, which is, well, one of them gets impregnated, and that's Dan was stuck on that. Like, how do you get the alien on board with protocol and everything? And he goes, how about one who has sex with them and impregnated? Well, then they think, well, not really sex with them, but yeah,
a sex that we can get past the censors.
Censors, it's fertilized, right?
Yeah.
So, and then they have interesting about when you watch the documentary, it's interesting how they made these graphics of like the inside the eggs. You have people with elastic gloves doing this.
Yep.
The suit is pretty much condoms.
Yeah, they had shredded condoms for the jaw. Yeah. And you can see kind of those mandibles on the sides and like the stretching of the jaw piece. I can see that's going on there. In fact, when they go down and check out the eggs on what we find out to be LV-426 later on, when they go down to the planet, they see the egg sacs inside the ship. The blue lights are actually, they belong to the Who.
The band!
Yeah,
yes.
Who were making something next door, and they kind of had like this ongoing friendship and stuff, and they borrowed these blue lights to shoot during that scene. Cool? One of the most iconic scenes in any science fiction film ever made, and we have the Who to thank for it, because we probably wouldn't have been able to see anything without those blue lights.
Yeah, they give the name to that big alien, that skeleton alien.
The space jockey was the original term, yeah.
Which the set it's actually legitimately huge. There is no forced perspective. That is a gigantic set they made.
Yeah, I think they made one model of it for shoots, but the one we see, I think, on 99% of when it's on screen is a real set, which is kind of cool because it's not featured that heavily in the film.
No, but it has a great like echoing eeriness to it. That strings that plays out to the scene.
And that small scene was so impactful for Alien fans that we literally got 2 films made in the last 10 years
because of it, right?
Because of that scene. Like Prometheus, Alien Covenant, I think they're both fine films, but I think like coming off of one scene that in the grand scheme of the Alien saga is not that impactful, but Ridley Scott just like couldn't wrap his mind, wanted to keep revisiting it and coming back to it. And I think it's just kind of funny that one small scene is almost more pivotal to where we have the franchise right now than anything else in the film.
So, build sets. They build it inside, I think, in the movie studio sets. It was very claustrophobic, like you see in the movie. Very hard to find the exit. I think if you watch the documentaries, a lot of cast and actors said, like, after takes, is like, all right, how do you get out of here?
Yep.
So that kind of played into the emotions that played out. Ridley Scott was very harsh to Sigourney Weaver. This is her first time, and that kind of plays out. There really was this play of adversary
Yep.
In between takes that really shows out in the movie of Sigourney pretty much on her own with conflict with a lot of other people. And I think even when she's like, I'm captain of the ship, there was a take where they all laughed at her. And like, you're not doing it convincing. You have to scare me. So
Yeah.
they had to do multiple takes of her finally saying, I'm the captain of the ship, to make it even more frightening. So she really did get slapped by Veronica Cartwright.
This is probably the Alien film where I think she yells the most. I really think that she's more subdued later on because she's got the legend with her in the following Alien films. Whereas this is the one where, you know, I think most people, if you didn't know that she was the star of this franchise, would be shocked to find her as the final girl in this film, because Tom Skerritt is our lead.
Yes,
for the first 60-70% of the film, Tom Skerritt is the lead actor.
He was hired before Ridley Scott was on board. I think I watched the documentary. Tom's like, I'm not really interested. The budget's small. It looks like it's going to be very campy. I'm not going to be. They go, well, we got Ridley Scott in here. We got a bunch of money after Star Wars. Okay.
Yep.
Get a movie.
Because I think they tried to get Harrison Ford for Dallas, and he turned it down because he didn't want to keep doing. He didn't want to be typecast, which I think is the right call, because he probably wouldn't have been able to do Indiana Jones if he'd been doing this film.
But Ridley Scott approached him again for doing. Why don't you do?
Yeah, we'll come back and do one together. Don't worry, that one will be a hit.
We'll do another one, right?
Yeah, Tom Skerritt taking on the role. I think it's weird because when you look at it in retrospect, I do see that Tom Skerritt is the lead of the film. You know, I watched this film knowing about the saga of Alien. I saw it when I was like 10 years old. I didn't love it the first time I saw it. It wasn't until I revisited the film, because it is a very slow burn. And I've come to appreciate the slow burn every time I rewatch it. I've always been more of an Aliens kid. I also really enjoy the director's cut of Alien 3. Check out our Why I Love Alien 3 video. I really, really do come to appreciate the slow burnness of this film, because it's not really about the alien for most of the movie. It's about the mystery of the transmission.
Well, it's how you screw up the process, right?
Yeah.
You always have to do the stupid. When you see eggs, you don't stick your head in there. You don't have to touch everything. Well, and that's the whole, what I gravitate, the whole staple theme of Alien is humans are stupid.
This is why I defend actually the Alien prequels, because so many people are like, it's two movies where people make dumb decisions the whole time, and I'm like, Kane sticks his face into an egg sack. Ash opens the pod bay doors when they're supposed to be quarantining. Ripley is the one person who would survive COVID-19, guaranteed, because she'd be like, "We're just not opening the door."
Hey,
for
the
anybody.
aliens using the air vents. Let me go down there.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we have Ash down there going, "We don't need to wear masks." Like Ripley is the person who's literally the reason why she's surviving is because she's just making the simplistic, smart move the entire time. Yeah. Every single Alien movie has people making dumb decisions.
Yes.
And that's okay, because people do when they're faced with uncertainty.
After I watch this movie, there's a certain sense of their exhaustion from working.
Oh,
they
absolutely.
Just want to go home, which you understand why they're kind of relaxed their protocols and relaxed their decision making. They're tired. They've probably been working 12-hour shifts and getting not a lot of sleep. And in this environment, you're not going to think very well.
Yep.
I understand that eventually logic. As fiction, we critique logic. When we critique nonfiction, we're like, how the hell is that possible? When we critique, like, well, that doesn't make sense. But if you're thinking reality terms, if you're work exhausted and your mind is just, you're not thinking very well, and then you're supposed to do this job, you're mentally exhausted is the worst thing.
Yeah.
You make stupid decisions.
Well, last night making dinner, I was exhausted. I didn't want to make dinner, but I had to eat something, and I almost burned my hand like 5 times grabbing a hot plate. So people make dumb decisions even after one bad night of sleep. But this is why I always defend the blonde running upstairs in the slasher movie, because I think when you're in a situation that is uncertain, that is frightening, you do make bad decisions.
You always want to get the high ground.
Yeah, the guy in the movie theater seat who's telling people that, you know, you're stupid for doing that, you're stupid for doing this. You're not in the situation, man. I know. Like, that's why I always defend these people making dumb calls.
Eating a bag of Pringles, watching Olympic athletes and going, well, that was stupid.
Yeah, that wasn't very good. You're like, what was it with that one with that one gymnast who said for her mental health she didn't want to continue doing the Olympics that year, and everybody was going up against her, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, are you leading the Olympic team? Like, people make decisions based on the situation they're in.
Yes.
And I think that is why I will always defend people making dumb calls in okay, I'll say it, a horror movie, because you're not in the situation, you don't know what's going on. And so I think Kane seeing all those eggs, I'd probably stick my face in there.
What the heck was that? Yeah. But it's, and it's when nowadays, everybody is legendary actors. These are all fresh faces at the time. These are people. Sigourney, this is her first time. Her dad was a famous, I think, TV producer, and that's how she kind of knew how to navigate through roll calls. But this is the first time she ever got a role, so she's kind of fresh to this. Veronica Cartwright, right?
Who auditioned for Ripley. And thought she had the role until she showed up to costuming. And then she found out she didn't. But the funny thing is, I think she won a Saturn Award for her performance. Like, she's been lauded for her performance as the character, but it is a very much it's a Barbara character from Night of the Living Dead, really, where she kind of goes a little bit catatonic and can't handle the stress of the situation.
Slap Sigourney too.
Yeah,
she went right into it. But she's the little girl from The Birds, if you didn't notice that.
That's right, she is. Yep.
Yeah. And then you have the famous James Bond villain,
Yaphet Kotto, from one of my favorite James Bond movies, and he actually said that he felt bad because he was told, I think by Ridley Scott, to pick on Sigourney Weaver and be cruel to her during filmmaking because they were supposed to be stretched because of the bonus situation.
And he's a big softie. Outtakes. Everybody just wants to. He's a big teddy bear.
Yaphet Kotto is one of the best parts of an Alien movie. He's one of the best parts of a Bond film. And he's one of the best parts in a terrible Freddy Krueger film. But he was one of the most experienced people to be on the set. And it does feel a bit like getting a clever person in a role who maybe plays against type. At the time, we still didn't have as many black people, in headlining roles or in major roles in films. There's 7 people in this movie. And to give one of the characters who seems to be the most heroic by the end, he's kind of the grunt man at the beginning, but he does a very heroic act at the end of the film. Giving that to someone like Yaphet Kotto, I think, does send a message about where we are in the future, where we should be in the future, is that there should be more inclusivity.
I've always referenced this movie with a lot of my director friends I knew from the Twin Cities area, like Jay Ness and Carlos Omar de Leon. And one of the things we always really know, we all kind of agree on, is the start of the film is exactly right. The production is so well that all you have to do is just rotate the camera, look at this room, look at how big the set is, without much talk and dialogue, and have them sleeping, show the computer running and everything. But you're pretty much showing off the entire production set in the first couple minutes to show how awesome this thing is.
Well, in fact, again, going back to those 2 prequel films, Prometheus and Covenant, both start fairly much the same. The ship is quiet, they haven't woken up yet. Because that is kind of the specialty about it, is that we're entering this world again, and everything's quiet for the only time in the movie. Things are going to be quiet. As we get into there.
But the ship's and also another character.
Yeah, again, it's like exploring the haunted house before the people arrive, exploring the Overlook before the family takes in for the winter. You're exploring the most horrifying element of the film, which isn't the alien. It's the claustrophobia. It's the enclosed spaces. It's the I can't get off the ship. Of the whole film.
The alien would be so
bad if it was a large scale thing.
I would love to see a scene of, all right, cut for lunch. Well, where the hell we get out of this thing?
Yeah.
Let's exit. Because it's almost like they said many times you thought you had to exit, then you go right. You had to draw lines. You had to go right out here to here to here.
I think the set moved too because they didn't have enough to build a Nostromo. So what they did was they would build the hallway as long as they could, and then if they had to shoot a longer hallway, they would shoot one half of them walking this way, and then the other half, and they would have it at the other end, and then give it a slightly different lighting angle so it would look like a different thing. That's probably why they got lost too, though, is because they'd move a hallway over to this room, and then you're in this room, and you're like, now I'm in a hallway again. And it's and I put Brooks was here on the wall. I know where I am now, or something. It's a trail of breadcrumbs that doesn't help because everything's moving. That's just you put a sandwich in your pocket.
There's 2 shocks in the movie: is the chest bursting, but also the reveal of Ash. I think that was one of the best shocks because we all know about the chest bursting. I mean, it was advertised that's pretty much the picture. We didn't really know. The second big shock was when you went to the movie was Ash, because you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
And part of it is that I do think there's no. I feel like there could have been a slightly bigger setup to that. I don't think they ever speak about androids in the film at all until he's revealed. I think hinting at that would have been a little bit more powerful, because I'll tell you this, as a 10-year-old kid watching this movie, I had no idea what was going on. And I was like, he's a robot. I was like, what? It's an alien movie. I didn't connect with what was going on and why I was supposed to be surprised by this. I think maybe giving an almost setup about just tell me where the androids are, and like you don't have to tell me he's one of them, but just mention in conversation a little bit
that these exist.
Yeah, because I think it came out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, there are robots in this world. Okay, didn't know that. Like it's a bit more jarring when it's unnecessary, at least to me.
I liked it,
but I think it works when I rewatch it. I just think.
You can't agree on everything.
No one's perfect.
No, but
some of us still think it's a horror movie.
What? Yes, it's still a horror movie, right? Yeah. So right, and I think it's out of all the movies in 1979, this still seems so fresh. You can make this movie right now, and it seems update. It seems new.
I think outside the fashion that like we perceive to be future fashion, the film does feel like the look of the ship looks better than most other ship movies today. You know, even just looking at Alien Resurrection in '98, which had another ship that I feel like was pretty cool. It's not as good. It's not as good of a ship. It doesn't feel like a lived-in environment. But also, this movie takes a lot of the ideas of dirty sci-fi from Star Wars. You know, where
very dirty.
This ship is kind of gross. You know, if there wasn't acid dripping from the ceiling, there'd probably be something else dripping from the ceiling.
There's no custodian on set, but you're right. Even if they did, there was probably like pipes leaking or rusting. Yeah, constant maintenance.
Yep, and I think it's funny that there was initially a sex scene in the script that was excised from the movie and placed in Prometheus later on about like, what do you do when you're bored on a ship? Well, you get busy. And I think, well, the Prometheus ship was clean. I can understand that, but I ain't doing nothing dirty on this ship.
But also emphasizes how they're completely work exhausted. They want to go home. You want to emphasize that. They have no time or interest to do anything else. They just want to go home.
Exactly, yeah.
And just want to eat and have some good food.
Yeah, because I think even Kane makes reference to the fact that, like, I can't wait to get home and eat something that I know what's in it. Because he's kind of eating a spaghetti-looking thing, but it doesn't sound like spaghetti. So,
and it is a misnomer. They did multiple takes for the chest bursting. They did it twice. It wasn't.
I think the first one didn't work.
The first one didn't work, but the second time it worked, and that was the shock. It actually worked. So the actors did know it was coming. How do you build a set like that and not know it's coming? Is kind of right.
Yeah, I think they said the first time they had left it relatively like something's going to happen, but we're not going to tell you what it is. Like, of course, you have the elements. You see Kane on the spot there, right there, and you know it's not just him. So you know something's going to come out of his body, I think was what was in the script, is something comes out of his body. And I think the second time they did it, they pumped more blood in because they said we got to really make it look good. We're going to pump a bunch more blood in. And the blood that hits Veronica Cartwright's character was more than expected and unaware of, and that's why she screams, is because she got hit in the face, in the eye with some of the blood. And she probably was terrified at that point. So the second take turned out to be brilliant because they just kind of went overboard.
And you can still see the mechanics of it. It's still effective. You can still kind of... there's a metal... if you freeze
you can see the... like when it comes up the first time and doesn't go through the shirt. Yeah. And I think it's really kind of silly, the little like alien as it stands here and it goes... like... It's very much a little alien on a little like movable thing that they're just twitching as it moves.
Pull the string.
It's probably the weakest effect in the whole movie, but because of how the scene is directed, it doesn't really take away from my experience of viewing it.
But you have Ridley Scott, I think, does well when he establishes his own pacing for the movie, that you finally settle into this is how fast we're going to go.
Yep.
And you accept it. Because a lot of we talk about Conan, should have been longer, should have been shorter, the pacing's kind of off, but he sets the right pace for this that we accept it. And that's really good film directing.
Yeah, because I think this is probably the slowest pacing of any of the Alien movies.
Yeah.
That, like I said, when I was a kid and I saw it, I was like, okay, right. Like it's cool, but it's not as. I was like, it's not as cool as the fast-paced stuff. And I've come to appreciate the slower pacing as I've gotten older, because I compare this to, like, let's go back to Dark Star for a second. Dark Star is like an 80-minute movie. I think Dark Star feels longer than Alien. Because I'm sitting there just waiting.
You watch Dark Star, you know I'm with,
whereas Alien, I watched it yesterday in the morning, and it just cruises. It absolutely cruises, where not a single moment feels wasted. This is one of the only situations, like, where I'm really going to side on the theatrical cut of the film as well.
Okay.
If you purchase this Alien anthology, there's an alternate cut of all 4 films on here. And I think 2, 3, and 4 are better in their special edition, their extended version. The director's cut for Alien actually I think is a minute shorter. There's a couple of scenes that are changed, tweaked, extended, shortened. But first thing is it actually does kind of an alternate version of the Alien life cycle, where she comes across Dallas later in the movie and he's in like a cocoon up
Yes.
against the wall.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really make sense in the context of the other films. So if you're a fan of the other films, it doesn't work. But then also I feel like the director's cut of this movie has not great pacing. It's a minute shorter and it feels so much longer. And that's proof that just rearranging the scenes can completely change the pacing of a movie. It's not longer and shorter.
Well, how he set them up too, because there's like when you're sitting in the control panels, but he shows down up for the camera, shows how the environment, basically how small you are to the environment.
Exactly, yeah.
Where a lot of other films, you're driving the ship. You want to show, how wonderful it is to be the pilot of the ship. But here it's like another position, another chair, well, endless chairs of this place. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I always stand by. I don't think pacing is always a shorter, longer thing, but rearranging things can drastically change the pacing of a movie. Yeah. The director's cut of this movie is shorter by a minute, but it feels so much longer.
And you show the ceiling to show that it's not an open set. This is closed. You have to show the ceiling as much as you can.
I think if you're going for claustrophobia, yeah, because you can't avoid it. You have to be showing us the room as it gets smaller. You know.
And like I said, it still seems fresh. It still seems like this was made almost in 2022. It could have been.
I think it could have been. I don't want it to be. Please don't remake this movie. Keep making more sequels.
No, I don't think. Right, I think it's a sequel, but I think it's weird to think that this movie at the time would spawn another like a franchise where this was the opposite of E.T.
Yeah. And I don't know if the intention was there for that. I mean, like I said, it is kind of a slasher movie in space. It is a haunted house in space.
And that was the gimmick because we had a lot of aliens were friends.
Yeah.
Close Encounters, E.T., a lot of stuff. And this was like, no, no, they're not.
No, they will murder you with acid.
Acid. Which is a great gimmick of another element to keep the anxiety going throughout the film.
Even hurting it is going to hurt you back.
Yeah.
Yep. There is a great, before we go, I want to mention there is a tremendous board game for this called Alien Encounter. Legendary Encounters Alien, which is a deck building game. It's fantastic. If you get a chance, you can actually play through all 4 movies. I have it. It's great. You can combine it with Predator cards and you can play it all like that.
Legendary Encounters.
It is fantastic. You can play through all 4 movies. There's also another game that's not exactly Alien. It's called Nemesis, but it's basically Alien. They just couldn't get the rights to Alien. Nemesis is one of the coolest board games I've ever played. It's extremely expensive, but you basically wake up on a ship and you don't know what happened, and there's an alien on board, and you have to fix the ship to get home.
I know there was video games.
It's fantastic. There's a lot of video games, too. I've never really felt like any of the video games hit it this hard, but I think board games have hit Alien really hard, and there's really some really fantastic ones. And I'm curious to see like what this Alien TV show is going to be that Noah Hawley is working on. I really like Noah Hawley's work on Fargo. And Legion, so I'm excited to see his Alien show, but I'm not really sure it's set on Earth.
Rather than going back to the origins of like mythologies and everything, I would like to stick to the mood of what this movie was about: was claustrophobia, anxiety, and stupidity.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. Yeah. Is it says it's set on Earth, so it would be after the 4 films are done, after the main series, because we would never have had aliens on Earth.
I'm not really interested in like an action oriented. I'm really set the mood of like go back to the closed environment, which is another core of horror.
Yeah,
closed in the environment. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I would like to see more than anything is I'm curious about the show, but I kind of would rather see Ridley Scott get one last crack at a film between Covenant and this film where it can slowly evolve back into the horror elements that are at play. It can evolve back into the haunted house at the end and kind of set the stage. I'd like to see Ridley Scott take one more crack at this thing, maybe a little bit less focused on the engineers, less focused on the android of it all, and just kind of get back to the meat of what the Alien is and kind of close off that trilogy right. But honestly, I think this is a franchise that could keep expanding, could keep trying new things. As long as we don't dip our toes back in Alien vs.
Right, you always want to inject something new into it.
Yep. And so hopefully the show has that. Because I think this is also a case where all 4 of the movies in this like core franchise, before we got the prequels, all 4 of them, very different movies. Very different. They try new things. They're all, same character, same mythology, but they're all very drastically different attempts at making a movie like this. And I do have to appreciate that. Even if you don't like the other ones, that's fair, but they do try some new things, and we have to credit that.
Different movies, different feelings, emotions. Like Aliens, it's high octane.
Yep.
I mean, you want to pump steroids into it.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, have you seen Alien? My God, it would be required film viewing for my film class.
Yeah, and I think it's a great movie to watch twice. Like I said, I didn't care for it that much the first time I saw it. I was younger, and I kind of different sensibility for it. I also watched it on TV. but revisiting the film later on in life has made me love it more and more. And I think actually it sits with me as a near perfect movie.
It's super quiet. I forgot how quiet it was.
Yeah, it's actually a great movie to watch if your wife is asleep next to you, because not much happens for the first hour, and then you can really wake her the hell up.
She's got a cat. I know you got a cat.
Yeah, we got cats. You know, yeah.
That cat has seen some things.
Yeah. Kind of wish he'd been the star of the movie. Jonesy had just appeared in every sequel. But, let us know your thoughts on Alien down below. What's your favorite Alien movie? There's 6 of them. Well, there's 8 of them, I guess, if you count the now non-canon Alien versus Predators. But I can't imagine either of those being your favorite. So let us know down below what you thought about this film and where it sits in your Alien ranking. Give us those Alien rankings down below. And let us know which Ridley Scott film should we cover next. He's one of the most prolific directors out there.
Blade Runner.
We've already done Blade Runner. I mean, he made 2 great movies last year that were quite underseen. So, we got to keep covering some Ridley Scott.
I think when he's under the radar, when everybody doesn't really know what he's doing, he really flourishes. But everything is like Kingdom in Heaven. Everyone's like, oh, he's doing another Crusade movie, and everybody was just on him. I think whenever we just leave him alone, he's fine.
He's just a grumpy old man that gets mad about kids with phones.
His last quote, he was definitely a grumpy old man. Kids don't know what they're doing now.
He's one of those guys that if the theatrical cut of his movie sucks, his director's cut is brilliant. And if the theatrical cut is great, his director's cut is terrible. it's like they go the exact opposite direction. Yeah. But let us know your thoughts on it down below. And while you're down there, please like and subscribe. There are 2 free things that you can do. Don't cost you a dime.
They're free.
And they help to support the channel, which is always cool because you can get new episodes of our show Mondays, Thursdays, and Scary Movie Saturdays. That's right. We put this movie down on the Saturday because even though I don't think it's horror, I think it's scary enough. And hey, check on that Patreon as well. For as low as $1 a month, you can join the Patreon and get episodes like Picks with Kyle and Nick. This month we're doing our 1997 rankings. You can find that up on the channel now. We also have previous episodes up there as well and exclusive content just for you to join there. If you join at $5 and up, then you can actually be on a rotating group of people that pick the movies that we cover on the show, which is fantastic because there's a lot of movies.
Can't pick a movie we've done before. That's it. There's plenty to choose from.
Yeah, there's an infinite number of films. Maybe I'll do a sequel. But until next time, we'll see you guys later. You can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
And I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. And where did the dripping water come from that movie?
Everywhere. It was gross.
Something was leaking.